Environment design. You already know about habit stacking from earlier chapters, linking a new habit to an existing one. For instance, if you already brew coffee every morning, stack a quick gratitude practice onto that routine. After I pour my coffee, I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Now combine that with environment design. Keep a notepad and pen next to your coffee maker. Suddenly, performing the habit becomes seamless. But let's take it a step further. How can you make bad habits harder to perform? For example, if you're trying to spend less time on social media, log out of your accounts after each session and leave your phone in another room during focused work hours. Adding even a little bit of friction can dramatically reduce the likelihood of falling into old patterns. Here's a hypothetical example. Say you want to start journaling daily. Instead of leaving your journal buried in a drawer, place it on your nightstand where you'll see it before bed. Better yet, open it to a blank page and set a pin on top. Now, instead of having to dig it out, it's ready and waiting for you. Small changes like this can make a huge difference. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, where are the points of friction in your current habits? Are there unnecessary steps or obstacles that make good habits harder than they need to be? On the flip side, are there ways you could add friction to discourage bad habits? There's another concept in this chapter, the 2-minute rule. This rule states that any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to complete. Why? Because it lowers the barrier to entry. Want to read more books? Start with just 1 page. Trying to run regularly? Commit to putting on your running shoes and stepping outside, even if you only jog for 5 minutes. Once you get started, momentum often kicks in, and you'll end up doing more than you planned. Here's a reflection question for you. Is there a habit you've been avoiding because it feels overwhelming or time-consuming? How could you break it down into a 2-minute version to make it easier to start? Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. The takeaway from this chapter is clear. Success doesn't come from working harder, it comes from working smarter. By making good habits easy and bad habits difficult, you create a system that supports your goals without relying on constant motivation. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one small adjustment you could make to your environment today to reduce friction for a positive habit? Write it down. Even tiny changes can lead to big results over time.
Great.
All right,
Let's
that
move
wraps
on
up
to
chapter
Chapter 7 of Atomic Habits. This chapter focuses on the 4th and final law of behavior change, making habits satisfying. James Clear explains that for a habit to stick, it needs to feel rewarding in the moment. By creating immediate feedback loops, we can train our brains to prioritize behaviors that align with our long-term goals. Here we go. Chapter 7, The Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. Have you ever noticed how humans are wired to chase rewards? We love instant gratification. It's why we scroll through social media, snack on junk food, or binge-watch TV shows. But when it comes to building good habits, the problem is that many of them don't deliver immediate satisfaction. In this chapter, James Clear introduces us to the concept of making habits satisfying and why it's crucial for lasting change. Here's an analogy. Imagine planting seeds in a garden. You water them, pull weeds, and wait patiently, but nothing happens right away. It takes weeks or even months before you see any visible growth. Now imagine if every time you watered those seeds, they bloomed instantly. You'd be much more motivated to keep tending to your garden, wouldn't you? That's the power of immediate rewards. They reinforce the behavior and make us want to repeat it. The key insight here is what James Clear calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is rewarded is repeated, what is punished is avoided. Our brains are constantly scanning for cues that tell us whether an action is worth repeating. If something feels good immediately, we're more likely to do it again. If it feels bad or even neutral, we'll quickly lose interest. So, how do we apply this rule to build better habits? One effective strategy is to use habit trackers. A habit tracker is simply a visual way to monitor your progress.
like marking an X on a calendar each time you complete a habit. Over time, seeing those consecutive marks creates a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. It's like giving yourself a gold star for showing up. Let me share a real-life example. Say you're trying to establish a daily writing habit. After finishing your session, take a moment to jot down how many words you wrote or how long you spent working. Then celebrate the win, even if it's small. Maybe treat yourself to a cup of tea or spend 5 minutes doing something you enjoy. These tiny celebrations signal to your brain that the habit is worthwhile, making it easier to stick with over time. But there's another layer to this: avoiding punishment for bad habits. Sometimes bad habits persist because they provide short-term relief. For instance, procrastinating might feel good in the moment because it helps you avoid discomfort, but it ultimately leads to stress later. To break this cycle, James Clear suggests using a technique called habit contracts. This involves setting clear consequences for failing to follow through on your commitments. For example, you could agree to donate money to a cause you dislike if you miss a workout or skip a savings goal. Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you rewarding your good habits enough? Do you have systems in place to celebrate your wins, no matter how small? On the flip side, are you holding yourself accountable for bad habits by introducing negative consequences? There's another fascinating idea in this chapter: the importance of immediate feedback. Delayed rewards like losing weight or saving money are great in theory, but they often lack the punch needed to sustain motivation. Instead, find ways to create instant feedback loops. For example, if you're working on saving money, transfer funds into a separate account and watch the balance grow. Seeing that number increase provides a tangible sense of progress, which keeps you motivated to continue. Here's a reflection question for you. Is there a habit you've been struggling to maintain because the payoff feels too far away? How could you introduce an immediate reward to make it more satisfying? Remember, even small reinforcements can make a big difference. The takeaway from this chapter is simple yet powerful. Satisfaction drives repetition. By making your habits rewarding in the moment, you ensure they stick for the long haul. As James Clear puts it, the costs of your good habits are in the present. The costs of your bad habits are in the future. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one way you could make a positive habit more satisfying today? Write it down. Celebrating progress, no matter how small, is the secret to staying consistent. All right, that wraps up.
Let's move on to Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits. This chapter dives into the importance of focusing on systems over goals. James Clear challenges the common belief that setting ambitious goals is the key to success, arguing instead that it's the daily systems we build that truly drive meaningful progress. Here we go. Chapter 8. Forget about goals. Focus on systems instead. Let me ask you something. How often have you set a big goal, like losing weight, running a marathon, or starting a business, only to feel stuck once the initial excitement fades? Goals are great for providing direction, but they're not the magic bullet we often think they are. In this chapter, James Clear makes a bold claim. If you want lasting change, forget about goals and focus on systems. Here's an analogy. Think of goals as the destination on a map and systems as the vehicle that gets you there. Sure, knowing where you're headed is important, but without a reliable car or bike or plane, you'll never reach your destination. Similarly, achieving your dreams isn't about the finish line. It's about the process you follow day in and day out. Now, here's the problem with focusing too much on goals. They create a yo-yo effect. You work hard to achieve the goal, celebrate briefly, and then fall back into old patterns because you haven't addressed the underlying system. For example, someone might lose 20 pounds by following a strict diet, but if they don't build sustainable eating habits, the weight will likely come back. James Clear introduces a powerful idea in this chapter. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
This means that no matter how lofty your ambitions are, your results will always reflect the quality of the processes you put in place. Want to write a book? Don't just aim to finish the manuscript. Focus on writing 500 words every day, rain or shine. Let me share a hypothetical example. Imagine two people who both want to run a marathon. One spends months fixated on crossing the finish line. Their entire motivation hinges on achieving that goal. The other focuses on building a consistent training routine, showing up each day, and gradually improving their endurance. Who do you think is more likely to succeed, not just in running the marathon, but in maintaining a lifelong love for running? It's the person with the strong system, not just the shiny goal. But here's the twist. Systems aren't just about reaching outcomes. They're about becoming the type of person who achieves those outcomes. Remember Chapter 2 where we talked about identity-based habits? Focusing on systems helps you align your daily actions with the person you want to become. Every time you show up for your system, you reinforce your desired identity. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you overly focused on outcomes at the expense of your process? Do you find yourself waiting for some future milestone to feel successful? Or are you celebrating the small wins along the way? There's another key insight in this chapter. Goals reduce your happiness in the present. When you're constantly chasing a goal, you live in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction. I'll be happy when I hit my sales target. I'll feel proud when I fit into these jeans. But what if you flipped the script? What if you found joy in the journey itself, in the daily practice of honing your craft, nurturing your body, or growing your skills? Here's a reflection question for you. Is there a goal you're currently working toward? How could you shift your focus from the end result to the process of getting there? What systems could you implement to make steady progress enjoyable and sustainable? The takeaway from this chapter is clear. Success isn't about hitting arbitrary benchmarks. It's about mastering the art of showing up consistently. As James Clear puts it, your goal is your desired outcome. Your system is the collection of daily habits that will get you there. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one system you could strengthen or create today to support your long-term vision? Write it down. Even small improvements to your daily routines can compound into extraordinary results over time. All right, that wraps up.
Let's move on to Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits. This chapter explores the concept of identity and how it plays a central role in habit formation. James Clear emphasizes that lasting change isn't just about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. By aligning your habits with your desired identity, you create a powerful feedback loop that reinforces positive behavior. Here we go. Chapter 9, The Power of Identity-Based Habits. Have you ever tried to change a habit but felt like something inside you was resisting? Maybe you told yourself, I want to eat healthier, or I want to exercise more, but deep down you didn't truly believe you were the type of person who could stick to those changes. In this chapter, James Clear dives into why identity is the ultimate driver of behavior and how shifting your self-image can transform your habits. Here's an analogy. Think of your habits as the roots of a tree and your identity as the trunk. The roots feed the trunk, which grows stronger over time. Similarly, every action you take reinforces or contradicts the beliefs you hold about yourself. If you see yourself as someone who values health, you'll naturally gravitate toward behaviors that support that belief, like eating nutritious food or going for a run. On the other hand, if you identify as not a morning person, you'll likely struggle to wake up early no matter how many alarms you set. The key insight here is this. Behavior change is about becoming, not achieving. Most people focus on outcomes, losing weight, getting promoted, saving money, but these external goals often fall short because they don't address the deeper question. Who do you need to become to achieve those results? James Clear introduces a powerful framework in this chapter, identity-based habits. Instead of focusing solely on what you want to accomplish, ask yourself who you want to be. For example, instead of saying, I want to read more books, say, I am a reader.
Or instead of aiming to save money, declare, I am financially responsible. These small shifts in language might seem subtle, but they have a profound impact on your mindset and actions. Let me share a real-life example. Imagine someone trying to quit smoking. They might tell themselves, I'm trying to quit, which implies uncertainty and leaves room for failure. But what if they said, I am a non-smoker? Suddenly, lighting up a cigarette feels out of character. It conflicts with their new identity. That's the power of aligning your habits with your sense of self. But here's the challenge. Changing your identity isn't always easy. Many of us cling to old stories about who we are, stories shaped by past experiences, failures, or even societal expectations. Maybe you've always thought of yourself as bad at math or not a creative person. Those labels might feel true, but they're not fixed. You have the power to rewrite your narrative one habit at a time. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, what limiting beliefs are holding you back? Are there identities you've adopted that no longer serve you? What would happen if you let go of those stories and started embracing a new version of yourself? There's another fascinating idea in this chapter. Every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Each choice you make, whether it's choosing water over soda, showing up 5 minutes early for a meeting, or practicing gratitude, casts a vote for your future self. The more votes you cast in favor of your desired identity, the stronger that identity becomes. Here's a reflection question for you. What's one identity you'd like to embody moving forward? How can your daily habits align with that vision? For instance, if you want to see yourself as a writer, commit to writing just one sentence each day. Over time, those sentences add up, and so does your confidence in your identity as a writer. The takeaway from this chapter is simple yet transformative. True behavior change starts with believing. When your habits reflect the person you want to become, sticking to them feels less like discipline and more like living authentically. As James Clear puts it, the most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one identity-based statement you can adopt today to guide your habits? Write it down. Say it out loud. Let it sink in. Remember, transformation begins with believing.
Okay,
All
let's
right,
move on to
that
Chapter
wraps up
10
chapter
of
9.
Atomic Habits. This chapter focuses on the importance of embracing discomfort as part of the habit-building process. James Clear explains that growth often requires stepping outside your comfort zone, and learning to tolerate discomfort is essential for long-term success. Here we go. Chapter 10, The Goldilocks Rule, How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. Let me ask you something. Have you ever started a new habit with excitement only to lose steam when the novelty wore off? It's easy to stay motivated when things are fresh and fun, but what happens when the work gets hard, boring, or uncomfortable? In this chapter, James Clear introduces us to the Goldilocks Rule, which explains how to sustain motivation by finding the sweet spot between challenge and boredom. Here's an analogy. Think about a thermostat. If it's too cold, you'll feel uncomfortable and want to turn up the heat. If it's too hot, you'll crank the air conditioning. But when the temperature is just right, when it's Goldilocks perfect, you barely notice it at all. Similarly, our brains thrive when tasks are neither too easy nor too difficult. They need to be challenging enough to keep us engaged, but not so overwhelming that we give up. Now here's the big idea. The Goldilocks rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are just beyond their current ability. This is where growth happens. For example, if you're learning to play guitar, practicing songs that are slightly above your skill level will push you to improve without leaving you frustrated. On the flip side, playing the same basic chords over and over again might get boring, while attempting a complex solo could leave you feeling defeated. James Clear also emphasizes that discomfort is a natural part of improvement. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens when you stretch yourself. Whether it's lifting heavier weights at the gym, tackling a tough project at work, or having a difficult conversation with a loved one, progress requires leaning into moments of resistance. Let me share a hypothetical example. Imagine someone training for a marathon. At first, running a mile feels like a huge accomplishment.
But as they build endurance, running 1 mile becomes too easy. It no longer challenges them. To continue improving, they need to gradually increase their distance or speed. Staying in the just right zone keeps them motivated and moving forward. But here's the catch. Even with the Goldilocks rule in mind, there will still be times when habits feel monotonous or draining. That's why James Clear highlights the importance of embracing boredom. Many successful people aren't necessarily more disciplined. They've simply learned to show up consistently, even when the task isn't exciting. For instance, best-selling authors don't wait for inspiration to strike. They sit down and write every day, regardless of how they feel. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you avoiding discomfort in areas where growth is possible? Is there a habit or goal you've been neglecting because it feels too hard or too boring? What would happen if you leaned into that discomfort instead of shying away from it? There's another key insight in this chapter. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline keeps you going. Relying solely on motivation is risky because it's unpredictable. Instead, focus on building systems that help you stay consistent, even when you don't feel like it. For example, if you're trying to meditate daily, set a timer for 5 minutes and commit to sitting through it no matter what. Over time, showing up becomes automatic. Here's a reflection question for you. What's one area of your life where you could embrace discomfort to achieve meaningful growth? How can you reframe that discomfort as a sign of progress rather than a reason to quit? Remember, the things that challenge you today are shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. The takeaway from this chapter is clear. Long-term success isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about learning to embrace it. By staying in the Goldilocks zone, you can maintain motivation while steadily pushing yourself to grow. As James Clear puts it, professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one small action you can take today to step outside your comfort zone? Write it down. Even tiny acts of courage can lead to big changes over time.
Great.
All right,
Let's move on to Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits. This chapter focuses on the importance of making thoughtful choices about which habits to prioritize and how to avoid distractions that derail your progress. James Clear emphasizes that success isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter by focusing on what truly matters. Here we go. Chapter 11, The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Don't. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to excel effortlessly while others struggle despite their best efforts? Is it talent, genetics, or something else entirely? In this chapter, James Clear dives into the role of genetics in habit formation and performance and reveals how much control we actually have over our outcomes. Here's an analogy. Think of your genetic makeup as the hand you're dealt in a card game. Some people are born with a natural advantage, like being tall for basketball or having a sharp memory for academics. But here's the thing, even if you didn't get the perfect hand, you can still win the game by playing your cards strategically. Success isn't determined solely by your genes. It's shaped by the choices you make and the systems you build. Now, here's the key insight. While genetics do play a role in determining your starting point, they don't dictate your destination. For example, someone with a naturally high metabolism might find it easier to lose weight, but anyone can achieve fitness goals with consistent effort and smart habits. Similarly, someone with a knack for music might pick up an instrument faster, but mastery comes from deliberate practice, not innate talent. James Clear introduces a concept called the genetic lottery, which refers to the traits and predispositions we inherit at birth. These traits influence everything from our physical abilities to our personality tendencies. For instance, extroverts may naturally gravitate towards social activities, while introverts might prefer solitude. Understanding your genetic inclinations can help you work with them instead of against them. Let me share a real-life example. Imagine two runners training for a race. One has a lean, athletic build and seems to glide effortlessly through workouts. The other has a stockier frame and struggles with endurance. Does this mean the second runner is doomed to fail? Not at all. By focusing on areas within their control, like nutrition, recovery, and mental resilience,
they can close the gap and achieve impressive results. Genetics might load the dice, but they don't roll the final outcome. But here's the twist. Your genes don't just determine your strengths, they also highlight potential weaknesses. For instance, someone prone to anxiety might need extra support to manage stress effectively. Someone with a sweet tooth might need to design their environment to reduce temptation. Recognizing these tendencies allows you to create strategies that play to your strengths and mitigate your challenges. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are your natural inclinations? Are there habits or behaviors that come easily to you? Conversely, are there areas where you face resistance? Understanding your unique wiring can help you tailor your approach to habit formation. Now here's another fascinating idea in this chapter. Talent is often overrated. Many highly successful people aren't necessarily gifted. They've simply learned to maximize their potential through relentless focus and consistency. For example, a writer who produces mediocre first drafts but revises obsessively will outperform someone who waits for inspiration to strike. Hard work compounds over time, often surpassing raw talent. Here's a reflection question for you. How can you leverage your natural strengths to accelerate your progress? At the same time, how can you address your weaknesses without letting them hold you back? Remember, success isn't about being perfect. It's about optimizing what you already have. The takeaway from this chapter is clear. While genetics matter, they're only part of the equation. You have far more control over your habits and outcomes than you might think. As James Clear puts it, your genes define your starting point, but your choices define your finish line. Before we wrap this up, take a moment to reflect. What's one way you can align your habits with your natural strengths? Write it down. Playing to your strengths doesn't mean ignoring your weaknesses. It means focusing on where you can make the most impact. All right, that wraps up.
Let's move on to Chapter 12 of Atomic Habits. This chapter focuses on the importance of staying patient and embracing the long-term process of growth. James Clear reminds us that meaningful change takes time, and success is often the result of small, consistent actions compounded over months or years. Here we go. Chapter 12, The Law of Diffusion, How to Make Good Habits Inevitable and Bad Habits Impossible. Have you ever felt discouraged because your efforts didn't seem to yield immediate results? It's easy to lose motivation when progress feels invisible. But here's the truth. Real change happens slowly, almost imperceptibly, before it becomes obvious. In this chapter, James Clear introduces the law of diffusion, which explains how habits compound over time and why patience is essential for lasting success. Here's an analogy. Think of planting a tree. On day one, all you see is a tiny seedling poking out of the soil. Nothing exciting happens for weeks or even months. But beneath the surface, roots are growing stronger, preparing the tree for future growth. Then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the tree bursts into full bloom. Your habits work the same way. At first, progress feels slow and uncertain, but stick with it long enough and the results will astonish you. Now here's the key insight. Habits follow the principle of compounding. Just as interest grows exponentially in a bank account, small improvements add up over time. For example, if you improve by just 1% every day, you'll be 37%